Good morning. That was a lot easier than the past few weeks to get your attention. Thank you for braving this terrible weather. I know this is what we get up north when it's 20 below and snowing hard. This is about the number of people that show up. So you're the brave souls who have come out today to enjoy this service in person. Thank you for being here. Thank you for those of you who stayed home and are comfortable in your jammies and your coffee and hi out there on the pavilion. Janet, at least, anyway, and maybe a few others I can't see. But it's great to have you with us this morning. As always, I want to thank our staff for, first of all, being great and wonderful colleagues, and for helping make our services happen on Sunday morning. Thanks to John Forsyth, who's solo in the AV room. He probably didn't want me to point that out today. But there he is doing his yeoman's work. Thanks to Abby and Sean for being here this morning. And we actually have two performances by our choir, who recorded on the pavilion, masked and distanced on Thursday evening. So we'll enjoy that as well. So thank you all for being here. If you are visiting us for the first time, welcome. Your presence this morning is a gift. We're grateful for that. If you're interested in finding out more about this congregation and see me after the service, or ask Anna Riazi, who's in the foyer right now, and we'll be happy to add you to our email list so that you can see all the things that are going on here during the week. And there is plenty, as you'll hear a little bit later. Our mission states that we are a welcoming congregation, freely seeking intellectual and spiritual growth, that we strive to create a larger community of peace, justice, and love. And we do that first by coming together and joining our spirits and joining our energies here, and then going back out into the world and trying to live our values as best we can in the wider world. Let's center ourselves in our hearts and minds for this morning's worship as we hear the prelude. a beacon of hope. In times of doubt, we seek answers in the dancing flame. In times of repression, we reach out for the lamp of truth. In times of loss, we pray for the comforting light. In times of joy, we light a candle of celebration. As we kindle our chalice this morning, let each of us find in its glow all that we need. Let's join in the chalice lighting response that you'll see on your screen or in your order of service. In the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, we gather this day. May the flame we now kindle be to us a symbol of the unity we seek. And let's join together in humming or reading along with our opening hymn, number 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life. One of our regular attendees on Sunday morning, not a member yet, but
My wife is.
Linda is. But Tom is a retired Lutheran minister, and for whatever reason has found a home here. Tom is also on our sabbatical committee, and that's the primary reason that he stands before you this morning. But have a seat. So we got together on Tuesday this week and had a conversation, and basically decided to just wing it this morning.
Yes.
So.
You're probably more comfortable with that than I am.
All right, but it was a 45-minute conversation about winging it. No, or not really, but about ministry, which was
right.
Really wonderful, and I appreciated it very much. So, for those of you who aren't aware, I have a sabbatical coming up starting at the beginning of April. I'll be gone from April 4th to August 8th, and during which time I'll be resting and relaxing, but also learning and growing through education and study. So it's a 4-month sabbatical. It's a part of my contract, and for which I'm grateful because my contract is with you. But Tom has been a minister for a long time and has gone through a few sabbaticals. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to sort of have a conversation with you about, first of all, what the meaning was, the benefit was for you during those times, and then for your understanding of what it meant to your congregations during that time.
Yes, thank you. Well, I was a parish pastor for 32 years, 25 of them in the same parish in Wilmington, Delaware. So over the course of that time, I had 3 sabbaticals, just like in the academic community at the end of 7 years, you know, that kind of thing.
I won't live that long.
No. Well, 2 of them were taken in the parish that I served for 25 years. So it was very helpful during that time as a time of renewal and refreshment, both for me and for the parish, to have time apart in which leadership could be dispersed and more shared among the members of the parish and the staff. We had a staff at this congregation, and it was a great time of personal renewal for me. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about, you know, what we might say today. One of the things we didn't say the other day was that it allowed me to stay in the same place for all those years, where you might think, you know, well, a guy could kind of either do the same thing after 2 years and have 20 years of the same experience, but that wasn't the case. The time of renewal allowed me to be deep into my sense of ministry to those people in that place. It gave them some respite from me for a while. One of my apprehensions was, and I don't think, Tony didn't say he shares this, but that they'd figure out they could get along without me. So they wouldn't need me to come back. So anyway, that didn't happen. But it was very beneficial in terms of renewal to start with.
Yeah. I know that when this was brought up in seminary, and it wasn't all that often, but that it allowed you to come back and have something of a different ministry. I mean, you are refreshed and renewed, right. And the congregation is also with that distancing, and you can then move forward together, perhaps in a new way, finding a new way to minister, or a variation of that.
Part of my sabbaticals were quite intentional in that regard. During my time, and this will date me a little bit here, but the Myers-Briggs personality inventory was a big deal at the time, and I was able to receive some training in that, a few weeks of training in that, which then in turn, I thought it did, but became very beneficial to the parish in terms of marriage counseling and pre-marriage counseling and working with young people, for instance. That was one of the things I intentionally did. And I know you have some plans for specific things you're going to be working on.
I'm going to be continuing some study in conflict transformation that I started this past fall, and I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, I have 2 graduate level courses that I'll be taking during my time, condensed but still full courses. So I'm looking forward to settling into that and having sort of a concentrated time to do that.
Right, and it was very beneficial personally and to the parish. Another one of those things I had, because you mentioned too, a second one that comes to my mind now, if I can remember it, having said it came to my mind. Oh, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Some of you are of an age, you remember that. And they had a program where you could go and be trained that I then returned to the parish, and it was applicable to the staff.
Right.
And also to the membership. So there were 2 things, like you were mentioning, that were very beneficial and renewing, both to myself, to the parish staff, and then I think subsequently to the congregation itself.
Yeah. I was a Stephen Covey junkie.
Yeah,
in my 30s and 40s, and I really appreciated that work.
Yeah,
and,
excellent.
We may touch on that a little bit later. So it wasn't as if you were walking around in the congregation saying, "Oh, you know, there's an ENTJ," but you're actually you're actually working, you know, to try and help people understand their own perspectives and their own ways of working. Right.
In training, we wore those things. Have you heard some of you do this? You have this thing on here and tells you what your letters are, and everybody's talking about what you are. But we didn't do that in the parish, no.
So each of these sabbaticals you took were different in a way, and were they different? I mean, in the 2 that you took in the congregation in Wilmington, did the congregation respond in different ways, or how did they respond to those 2?
Well, the first one, honestly, they had to get me to take it. and I, because I really was honestly burying myself here, but concerned about what if they figure they get somebody else to do this instead of me when I come back. But when we did do it, we found that it was quite beneficial across the board. One of the things I did both times, on the personal part of it, not just the study part of it, was spent time in a monastery, which has some very interesting things connected to it as well, Trappist and Benedictine. And if you know some of you, perhaps, they don't talk for a whole week. And you're the guest. And I've got some stories about that. But that was personally very gratifying and meaningful to me to do that. And I still remember it to this day. I had this, I guess it was a couple of weeks at each place maybe during that time.
And, in terms of, and I'm assuming this is true because I'm hoping this is going to be true for me, that you came back with more energy, more sort of from a calmer place perhaps than because day to day things tend to build up over 7 years or however many.
Absolutely. It was a wonderful time of renewal. I felt reinvigorated, recommitted to the task of being a pastor in that community, and refreshed. And I think that one thing we haven't hit on, it maybe it'll be another question, but the benefit to the parish itself in my absence, in terms of assuming leadership and developing programming, some of which, I've been gone there, I've been retired 16 years, but some of those programs that they set in place when I was gone are still vital programs in the life of the parish that may not have evolved had I been there.
Right.
I hate to say that, but it's possibly true.
Fortunately, we have a fabulous congregation here who are great at developing just that kind of thing. But I do think that the possibility of engagement during a sabbatical can be greater, actually. And even though this is happening, what we call off-season here in Naples, there's still at least 2/3 of our congregation here, and could be re-engaging, rethinking their involvement and their engagement in the congregation. So that is another hopeful benefit.
Absolutely.
I know that we talked a little bit about the fact that we share the love of a particular writer, poet, Wendell Berry.
Yes.
And the sermon today, the service today, the message today is really utilizing Wendell Berry's words.
Oh, good.
And you're going to help.
Yeah.
You're going to read one of those.
Not quite. I'm going to read something.
But Wendell Berry has a series of poems called Sabbath poems, which you're very familiar with, really about taking time and taking time to reflect. And that's what our message is today. So I want to thank you for coming up. And you should know that Tom is only one member of our sabbatical committee. We have a committee of people that are organizing services, making sure that, and Tom is more involved in making sure our pastoral care is solid and consistent. And we have folks making sure the staff is going to be cared for and fed and nourished during this time because it's a fabulous staff. And Sean and Abby will be here throughout, so they will provide some consistency in our worship services. So, and you'll get to hear a whole bunch of different people provide their perspectives on Sunday morning, which I think will be a nice break from T. Fisher. So,
I used to think the same thing. Believe me.
Yeah.
I was always amazed when I look out the window on Sunday morning, and this is true. It's pretty humbling. You look out the window of your office and you overlooks the parking lot, and you see people coming, and they know you're in charge. I mean, it really is a humbling. Think about it. What if it was you? It really is a humbling thing.
It absolutely is. That's why I look out over the garden. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And let's take some time to center ourselves into a time of sharing and meditation as we sing our centering hymn. Number 90, you can read along or hum along in the hymnal, From All the Fret and Fever of the Day. From all In quietness and solitude we find the soundless wisdom of the deeper mind. With clear, harmonious purpose, let us then bring richer meaning to the world again. Even during the time of COVID, when there wasn't anybody sitting here, we took time to stop and consider our own lives and the lives of those with whom we love, who we come in contact with, and take a moment to be able to speak a name out loud, someone who perhaps we're thinking about, who needs our thoughts and our collective thoughts and prayers. Often we recognize those folks on the front lines of healthcare, of any of the front lines in our society who have put themselves at risk during this time of the pandemic. And so we do so again today, knowing that this pandemic is not quite done, that we are still here, masked, with limited capacity, which only reflects the outer world and what's going on there. We know that while case numbers are down, our hospitalizations are still high, and that there are people struggling every day. So we give our thoughts and our prayers to those who do work every day, risking their own lives for the lives of others. And for those lives that touch our own, I offer you this time of sharing, of speaking a name out loud, and letting that reverberate in this hall, and for those of you online, to hear that voice spoken out loud. Joys and sorrows. Thank you. And Eleanor, I heard you mention your mother's name, and welcome back from that time. Our hearts are with you in your loss. Your mom was 102. Lived a good life. Kathy was a member of this congregation for some time. And so we're grateful that you were there. And so thank you. And thank you all for sharing, for your connections, your loves, your hopes. Let's enter into a time of meditation. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one. Working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing and rejoicing, getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community, here, together. We are one. Let's share a few seconds of silence. John, if you advance to the next slide, you'll be fine.
Love is love is love is love. Love is love is love is love. Oh, love is love is love is love. Oh, love is love is love is love. Oh, love, love, love. All we need is love, love, love. All we need is love, love, love.
An opportunity to be silent together. Some quiet music in the background.
Love is love. Oh, love is love is love.
It is feeding through the live stream. Janet's hearing it out there. I think we'll be able to hear you, Tom.
This is a poem by Wendell Berry entitled How to Be a Poet, subtitled To Remind Myself. 1. Make a place to sit down. Sit down. Be quiet. You must depend upon affection, reading, knowledge, skill, more of each of these than you have. Inspiration, work, growing older, patience, for patience joins time to eternity. Any readers who like your poems doubt their judgment. 2, breathe with unconditional breath the unconditioned air. Shun electric wire. Communicate slowly. Live a three-dimensional life. Stay away from screens. Stay away from anything that obscures the place it is in. There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. 3, accept what comes from silence. Make the best of it you can. Of the little words that come out of the silence, like prayers prayed back to the one who prayed them. Make a poem that does not disturb the silence from which it came.
Our second reading this morning, again from Wendell Berry, is titled Sabbath Poem 1, 1979. I go among trees and sit still. All my stirrings become quiet around me like circles on water. My tasks lie in their places where I left them, asleep like cattle. Then, what is afraid of me comes and lives a while in my sight. What it fears in me leaves me, and the fear of me leaves it. It sings, and I hear its song. Then what I am afraid of comes, I live a while in its sight. What I fear in it leaves it, and the fear of it leaves me. It sings, and I hear its song. After days of labor mute in my consternations, I hear my song at last, and I sing it. As we sing, the day turns, the trees move. I first encountered Wendell Berry in our hymnal, much as I did the words of Thich Nhat Hanh, who we honored a few weeks ago. This hymnal, published in the early 1980s, was a good attempt at bringing into our services a wide range of material from different world religions, different thoughts, different ideas, different musical genres. It was a gift. Perhaps it needs to be updated, but it still is something of a gift. In this book, Wendell Berry is represented, I think, 5 times. One of the things I came across: the love and the work of friends and lovers belong to the task and are its health. Rest and rejoicing belong to the task and are its grace. So this is a homily about renewal, about taking the time on a regular basis to shift yourself out of the routine, find a place apart, center yourself, and engage in some serious self-reflection. In addition to considering sabbatical as our sort of overarching theme, there are 2 additional and related reasons for talking about this today. The first is with all the anxiety about the state of our nation, as well as the chasms that divide its people, those of us with the privilege and the power to make change, and yes, that includes you and me, we need to be able to find a calm, clear center and a clearly defined and sustainable power source from where we can launch our re-engagement with a troubled world. For me, that can only come from a deeply held and well-nurtured moral center. The second has to do with those chasms and finding, if at all possible, ways to begin to find a common ground, common language. But this especially will require an ability to communicate from a deeper, calmer place, and not from anger or frustration or from anxiety or fear. It begins, perhaps, by asking ourselves a simple question: why? In the same way that I've heard many of you talk about asking someone with a slightly different political persuasion, should I say, why? Why do you think the way you do? And I can only assume that if you would really like to understand others, if you'd really like to get to the bottom of their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences, their motivations, what got them to that particular place, then you would in turn be ready to articulate the same things for them. Not from a place of anger or frustration or anxiety or fear, but from a calm, clear center. Why? And what? Why do you think and feel the way you do? What combination of nature and nurture and experience have brought you to where you are? What is it that moves you? And what is it that holds you back? What is it you fear? In yourself or in others? Finding renewal, finding that calm, clear place at the center, at your center, requires time and reflection and not just a little bit of courage. Wendell Berry's poems are an outward pouring of his own meditations, a practice of not necessarily emptying the mind, but giving it time and space to find the deeper level and reflect on a relationship with self and with the world. I go among trees and sit still. All my stirrings become quiet. Around me like circles on water. My tasks lie in their places where I left them, asleep like cattle. This is obviously an ongoing practice of Wendell Berry's, a regular journey into the depths. And at the foundation of his practice is that place, finding that place apart that's peaceful enough, comfortable enough, still enough to listen. His relationship with nature is real. He's a transcendentalist and a wonderful poet of nature. For him, nature is the calming influence, as it is for so many of us, whether we experience it out in our garden or on the beach or in the woods or from a corner in our own space looking out a window. I don't think that it's an understatement to say that human beings are not particularly tolerant of discomfort. Well, now that's not to say when we are faced with some sort of adversity we don't rise to the occasion, but we can truly be creative in finding ways to distract ourselves from sitting still and asking those questions. My mother, for example, was a wonderful problem solver, a proactive person, out and about all the time. But she said she could never possibly meditate because she would be worried about all those thoughts that came into her brain. What would they reveal about herself? Listening to our hearts demands time and stillness and the risk of true self-awareness. Then what is afraid of me comes and lives a while in my sight. What it fears in me leaves me, and the fear of me leaves it. It sings and I hear its song. We don't often think about what fears us or why, but perhaps we should. Take a few seconds to think about what fears you. And if nothing is bubbling up, think about what that means and perhaps what kind of privileged place you hold. If you're a woman, you know that men, or at least the force of patriarchy in our society, fear your power, of your taking control of your own body and your own life. They fear losing their dominance. They fear a wisdom that is more relational than transactional. If you're among those marginalized in our society, you know that in the zero-sum game we tend to play, there are those who fear your equality, that for you to achieve equity, they will have to lose something somewhere along the line. Recognizing the fear in others, while perhaps not generating outright compassion for them, may edge you a little closer to understanding. Then what I am afraid of comes. I live for a while in its sight. What I fear in it leaves it, and the fear of it leaves me. It sings, and I hear its song. And what is it you are afraid of? And why? What are the anxieties that bubble up that sometimes go unspecified but are there? The things we all fear for ourselves, for our families. The things you fear tend to expose the things you cherish and would be loath to lose. And again, if you don't find much to fear, consider your privilege in that. And when the answers do come, as they will, repeat the question, why? Over and over till you come to the heart of the matter, a self-awareness that may not always be pretty, but from which you may begin at least to soften the edges of the anxiety and the fear, because they come more fully into focus. In his book, Beyond Religion, Ethics for a Whole World, the Dalai Lama speaks about the absolute necessity of engaging the world even in your deepest times of reflection. The yin and the yang of reflection and engagement. He writes, "In this age of globalization, the time has come for us to acknowledge that our lives are deeply interconnected and to recognize that our behavior has a global dimension. When we do so, we will see that our own interests are best served by what is in the best interests of the wider community. If we concentrate exclusively on our own inner development and neglect the wider problems of the world, or if having recognized these we are apathetic about trying to solve them, then we have overlooked something fundamental. Apathy, in my view," he writes, "is itself a form of selfishness. For our approach to ethics is to be truly meaningful, we must, of course, care about the world. Thus, living ethically requires a rhythm of engagement and reflection, neither of which can work at its best without the other. After days of labor mute in my consternations, I hear my song at last, and I sing it. As we sing, the day turns, the trees move." For Wendell Berry and the Dalai Lama, an inclusive approach to an ethical life requires recognition of two basic principles, both of which can be grasped through our common experience as human beings and our common sense, and also supported by the findings of contemporary science. As the Dalai Lama would say, the shared desire of all humanity for happiness and the avoidance of suffering is the first thing. And the second is our understanding of our interdependence as a key feature not just of humanity, but of all existence. With these basic human principles working on with our own personal experiences, our thoughts and our emotions, we gain a better and more accurate sense of ourselves in the world, allowing us to move beyond our superficial responses of anxiety and fear to sing a richer song and articulate a deeper, more meaningful purpose in life. In the poem that Tom wrote, How to Be a Poet, just as in being a poet, ministry itself requires that sense of stepping aside, taking all that you have been given, all that you can know and learn from others. Listen and hear what comes forth, and then go back out and reflect that to the world. To breathe with unconditioned breath the unconditioned air and accept what comes from silence. A sabbatical is a time for rest and reflection, given time and space. It's a time to hear once again the song that stirs within each of us, perhaps with new variations. It's a time of wonder, a time of opportunity. It is a gift for which I am deeply appreciative to you, but you yourselves have an opportunity as well. When I leave at the beginning of April to rediscover my own song, I hope that you who will remain will find a communal song to sing, lifting each other in joy, holding each other in sorrow, finding opportunity to participate in new ways, listening to new voices, finding your own time for reflection and renewal, continuing to live your values within these walls and out into the world, building an ever stronger sense of community. And when I return in early August, I trust that we will have stories to tell and renewed energy to share as we move into our next phase of ministry together. So may it be. So as we take a little time to reflect on today's words, I hope you'll also remember this incredible community and this congregation, the morning's offering for the ongoing mission of our work together will be gratefully received. I'm so grateful to you and the choir for just persevering and doing what you do out there, and wish we could be there in person, and look forward to the time when the choir can be right back here in the sanctuary. I thank you also for today's musical theme of love and around Valentine's Day. Thanks very much. And Sean and Abby invite you all to a musical performance tomorrow of their new chamber music group, the Nautilus Chamber Players, right here in this sanctuary at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. The program is entitled Love and Solitude, and it'll feature pieces by William Grant Still, Samuel Barber, Darius Muhold, Paul Reed, Thomas Albert, and Giacinto Chelsea. 6 musicians from FGCU, the Naples Philharmonic, Punta Gorda Symphony, Southwest Florida Symphony, Audivi, Opera Modo, and more will be here to perform tomorrow. Our COVID guidelines will be in place, which means we have a 50% capacity limit, and everybody here will be wearing masks. Our 25th season of Progressive Voices continues this week, Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock, with Malia Lazu, MIT lecturer and award-winning strategist in diversity and inclusion when she was with Berkshire Bank, offers a lecture on 21st century economy, values, and diversity and why they matter. So information on registering for the Progressive Voices series, which is by registration only, will be available in the Sunday News. And finally, the reopening committee will meet again this coming Thursday to consider our next moves in response to the pandemic, and we'll just have to wait and see. As I've said before, this is a really thoughtful group of people who really care about the community, and I'm just so grateful that they have stepped up as individuals to sort of help guide our way through the pandemic. So you'll hear more after that. Our closing hymn is number 128. You can read along or hum along in your masks, For All That Is Our Life, and hopefully the words will be on your screen. Number 128, if not. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are bound to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. Serve for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we give our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we have come to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. Let us venture into a calm, clear place where we can relinquish our clutter and relax from busyness into being. Let us settle into that calm, clear place where the earth supports our bodies and the community lifts our spirits, where we can breathe in peace and center ourselves in love. Let us welcome our calm, clear place where our hearts can open and our thoughts can expand beyond the cobwebs of convention into the creative flow of possibility. Go in peace. Go in love. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Are you familiar with?